tax return is so small. We're getting back $10,000. Don't you wish you had kids now? Welcome back, but if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. No, I don't. I'll gladly take a couple $100, cause while you'll brag for a month about your fancy Florida vacation or the lifted truck you'll buy with a 60% interest rate, in 2 months, you'll be talking about how you can barely make ends meet and your daughter might have to drop out of dance, and how your entire paycheck and a third of your husband's go towards daycare costs. You get extra spending money once a year. I get extra spending money each paycheck. Glad you're excited though, Mackenzie. No, I don't need any pyramid scheme mascara. Way too many Americans are financially illiterate. We were required to pull credit reports at one of my old jobs using signed release forms to gain permission. Let's just say that the average American finances are jaw-dropping disasters. And it's rare to find someone who hasn't completely trashed their credit with a series of terrible financial decisions. Mine were jacked in my 20s, all my fault, but no one, parent nor school, teaches you to prepare for basic life finances, so I figured out the hard way. Credit card? Sure, I'll take 3. Cleaned it all up in my 30s, and I've become one of those well-qualified buyers you hear mentioned in car commercials ever since. And conveniently, even bankruptcy won't save you from student loan debt in most cases. And that's actually a double-barrel load of BS. The borrower has no easy way to get out from it, which means there's zero risk to the lender, so they have no incentive to be choosy about how much they loan to who, which means colleges have no incentive to do anything to corral the cost of anything. I'm sure the stated purpose of making student loan debt non-dischargeable was to prevent people from declaring bankruptcy to get out of it when they probably don't have any credit to ruin. But I absolutely think it was so that they didn't have to think much about how much money they were loaning, because both the loan industry and colleges stand to lose a lot if they actually had to think about those things. I think a lot of us fall into that trap in our 20s, especially those of us with not so supportive parents. To be able to even buy groceries and gas in my teens and 20s, I had to have a credit card. I was around $12,000 in credit card debt by the time I was 22. I had to work my behind off for several years to be able to pay them down enough to have a healthy amount of debt and pay history. One thing my dad did do for me though was get me a crappy little rice burner 88 Corolla around my 16th birthday. He had me take out the loan in my name but co-signed. By the time it was paid off, I had a nice little start to my credit history, which helped me qualify for all of those cards I ended up having, lol. By the time I was 26, I had a 760 credit score and 10 years of history. This allowed me to qualify for a home loan during the housing crash that started around 15 years ago. Even though I had never made more than $30,000 a year and was unmarried and no one to co-sign, I qualified for up to $100,000 towards the purchase of a home. I also never missed payments on my cards or apartment rents. I literally had to prioritize that because I knew how important my credit score was going to be. My friend, on the other hand, dropped out of college and still has defaulted loans, several evictions, an outstanding credit debt, a 490 score, and literally is stuck living with anyone who does have a slightly higher score and paying them directly while being at their mercy for having a place to stay. She then made it worse by marrying a man with even worse credit than her and literally cannot get in a single apartment. No one will rent to them. It's going to be even harder to get their crap together enough to ever buy a house. I feel bad for her because honestly her parents did even less for her than mine did for me, which wasn't much. I'm glad you have come out on the other end of the 20 struggle though. Not every one of us makes it out. Some are doomed to live in poverty forever. Capitalism sucks. My parents didn't have a lot of financial literacy. As children of people who lived through the Great Depression, they were taught to never trust banks and to never borrow money. Great financial advice in the 1930s, not so much in the 70s and 80s. So when I was figuring things out for myself, I made a ton of mistakes. In my 20s and 30s, I tended to be cash poor and credit rich, but my 401k and credit scores were outstanding. The thing was, I didn't know it. When I finally decided to buy a house, this was in 2009, so housing prices had basically hit bottom, my mortgage broker nearly fell out of her chair when she saw my credit rating. I had no idea because what little I bought on credit, I paid off as soon as possible and never missed a payment. At least I had an answer to why I got credit card offers in the mail every day. I mean, you're completely right about Americans being financially illiterate, but in a lot of ways, society and the government fail us all for their own benefit. Schools are way more concerned with creating people who are willing to trade the time for money than people who have actual financial literacy. If schools created generations of kids who knew how to do their taxes, understand interest rates and investing, and don't want to trade their time for money in a way that's so exhausting that they won't have time to follow their actual dreams, who's going to work at McDonald's? Who's going to dig ditches? If people grow up knowing better, then who's going to be willing to be a cog in the wheels that turn capitalism? Parents get $10,000 in refunds, but also spend $10,000 plus in childcare every year. They're losing money. Yeah, I'll never understand why people brag about high tax returns with children. Like, bro, that child has cost you way more than $10,000 this year, moron. Yeah, it's the same with the US COVID bonus pay they gave you if you had a kid. That $500 will have your kid eat for a couple months, max, depending on its age. Like other commenters say, parents just like to brag to make you feel left out. Meanwhile, they're always complaining and whining they're stressed, tired, and unhappy. The stats on happiness don't lie. Just shove it back in their faces, all the amazingness of not having kids. Oh, you got $10,000 back and spend that on your kid's daycare? I'll take all the money I earn and go take a cruise. I'm not American, so these words really don't mean anything to me. Taxes are directly deducted from my salary, and that's that. What's the difference? Tax return is a paperwork you file once a year between January 1st and April 15. Tax refund is money you hopefully get back. The better you are filing your return, the likely you are to get a refund. If you forgot big deduction when you're itemizing or itemized when you shouldn't have taken the standard deduction, you'll miss out on a lot of cash or owe. Taking out your taxes out of your salary is how most countries work, and the IRS knows exactly how much each citizen is owed. They could easily send you a check, and it would be your job to tell them it's wrong if you have other income. However, in the US, tax filing software companies, TurboTax, HR Block, etc., lobby, bribe politicians to make taxes to seem as convoluted as possible so that they can charge the poor, who spend 60 hours a week at 2 jobs, barely able to make rent, the working class, $45 to do their taxes. And because they have made higher education out of their reach for these people as well, most Americans have no idea how much they are effed over in literally every facet of their lives. A comment on this, as someone who's from Jamaica, a very poor country, even though it's advertised as this tropical paradise, it's only tropical paradise for people with a lot of money and their outside interests as well that are invested in Jamaica to make sure that they get the money and not the average Jamaican person. It's crazy to me how America has literally so much money, an incredible amount of money, and the infrastructure and education is still this poor. It's a crime against humanity. It doesn't make sense. It's right in your face, and you don't educate people enough for them to know that they're being cheated. Wow, this reminded me of another moment where our mother brought up her $10,000 tax return and shared that her family will be going to Disneyland using the money. And then I asked her that isn't it better to have the money towards a babysitter? Because this mother had also complained about having trouble finding one and had called out of work a couple of times for not having one. Got a response, Disneyland is so fun though. And although finances should be kept private, you wouldn't believe how many parents don't have savings for their emergencies or college funds. What I'm really grateful for is that my mom used to tell me whenever she got her tax refund back was that the money was just going to go back to raising the kids, helping to raise my little siblings and me, and that she wasn't really going to use any of this extra money for anything that she wanted. So I'm really happy she shared with me anytime that something was difficult with parenthood. She would share if she was tired or like how tiring parenthood is. But what I don't get is how she was surprised when I said I didn't want any kids, even though every time that she asked me to help, I would really not look forward to it. I wouldn't be eager to do it. I would still help her because she needed the help, but it wasn't something that I looked forward to, nor did I want to do. So I don't understand how that was a surprise to her. But also, yeah, she did do the same thing that other parents do to their children. When you have your own kids, you'll understand why I'm this way, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, I won't. I still won't. You have to use your words. You can't shortcut this. I'm not gonna wait. Like, why would you wait until I have kids for us to have a serious conversation? Just let's talk right now. Let's all communicate with children as if they're people, please. Okay? Thank you.